So, first of all, I want to start off this video by congratulating Nalyssa Smith. Nalyssa Smith was, this is the craziest thing I think I will ever say based on every assessment I've made of Nalyssa Smith as a player. Nalyssa Smith's impact was way greater than her stats in the finals. She's a WNBA champion, and congratulations to Nalyssa Smith. Would any Fever fan have thought that Nalyssa Smith could have been the fifth option on a championship level team? I think, yeah. I think if you asked me a year ago, could Nalyssa Smith ever be a fifth option on a championship winning team? Yeah. Could Nalyssa Smith ever be a first or second option on a championship winning team? No. And what we saw from her in Vegas, I would be really interested to see how Nalyssa Smith could have got on under Stephanie White. I still think Nalyssa Smith's fit beside Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin is not good. And nothing was worse than her fit in Dallas. She was terrible in Dallas. Absolutely terrible in Dallas. You have a coach that's as bad as Chrissy Sides, and then you don't have players like Caitlin and Aaliyah around you. And Paige Bueckers is really good. Paige Bueckers is really good, but Paige Bueckers is more of a really good player, as in she can go and get hers. She doesn't create space for her teammates like Caitlin Clark did. There were some games where Nalyssa Smith, from running hard, got 8 points. She got 8 points in some games from just running hard and catching Caitlin's passes. That doesn't happen with Paige. That's not saying Paige is a bad player. They're different types of players. Paige is not a 1. Paige is a 2 that played a bit at the 1. She's not a 1. She's not maybe you can argue she's a combo, but she's not an engine point guard, which Caitlin Clark is. But what we saw Nalyssa Smith do in Vegas was completely change her role to a way that I honestly wasn't sure Nalyssa Smith was going to be able to do it. Because yes, there are still some big flaws in Nalyssa Smith's game. We saw there is a big flaw with she jumps too much. Her defensive positioning got better. Her off-ball defense is night and day compared to Christy Sides. Because again, she's a proper coach, and she also was Aja Wilson behind her as a shot blocker. But she's very foul prone because she still jumps and turns her body. I remember last year, it got so annoying every time she'd be in right position and then she would last second jump and turn her body and commit a foul. She still does that. That is still a flaw. But the thing is that Nalyssa Smith's role was so much better this year. So I'm going to explain to you guys the difference between what Nalyssa Smith was last year and this year. For just in general. And my favorite thing about this is that Fever haters are trying to victory lap, complaining about the Indiana Fever and being like, oh, all these players have success when they leave the Fever. I'm like, dude, she was so bad in Dallas that if this stint did not work out, she would have been out of the league. That's how bad she was in Dallas. She was never that bad in Indiana. She was never that bad. She was in Indiana. What process was, she's not a starter. And I still think she doesn't start for 10 of the 13 WNBA teams. But she started for the one to win a championship, so it is what it is. She's a champion. She's a champion as a starter. So is Kirsten Bell, but Nalyssa Smith's a champion as a starter. No one can take that away from her. And Smith's way better than Bell. But they're all victory lapping, being like, oh, look, when they leave the Fever, suddenly, look at how well Nalyssa Smith's playing, how bad she was for the Fever. Man, Nalyssa Smith was not that much worse for the Fever than she was for the Aces this year. But it was the Dallas stint. The Dallas stint was what nearly destroyed Nalyssa Smith's career. But this is the big difference between where Nalyssa Smith was playing this year and last year. So, last year, she was playing in this position right here. She played on this wing. So, you had CC, and then you had AB. So she would start low. And then AB would set the screen here. Because even though Caitlin Clark is better shooting going left, Anytime Caitlin came off a screen going left was when there was some sort of an action coming into that, so she would go one dribble, shoot left, because Caitlin Clark's not a comfortable passer with her left hand. So if you're initiating the offense with her going left, she struggles. So you initiate that offense going right, Caitlin will come off this screen. Aaliyah Boston, well, to be honest, the screen would be way higher. Aaliyah Boston would kind of go into short roll, anywhere between here, and depending on what happens, she would kind of go here to here. A lot of the time, Caitlin would find her in there, and it meant that if there was space on the roll, Caitlin would throw it into space, and Aaliyah would run into it. So that's kind of how that went. But Nalyssa Smith, while this would happen, would drift out to here. So she would drift out to there while the pick and roll is happening. And then what would end up happening is that a lot of the time, Nalyssa Smith's player, so let's say CC's gone to here, Aaliyah Boston has the ball here, AB has the ball here, AB's player is here, or I say, AB's player a lot of the time would be blitzing a ball screen, so the two of them are blitzing Caitlin coming up, so Aaliyah gets the ball here, Nalyssa Smith's player drops in. A lot of time it was Lexi Hull in this corner, so what would happen is that the help wouldn't really come off Lexi Hull's player, because Lexi Hull started shooting really well in the corner, so you had a player here, and the way Nalyssa Smith played last year is that realistically she should have been cutting down, but it clearly was a tactical thing. She became a spacer. She became a non-shooting, non-cutting spacer, which was absolutely pointless. Whereas this year, don't even explain the Dallas. With Dallas, it was literally you go play here. You had Tierra McCowan here, and then we would just dump it into the post and hope for the best. Or Maisha shines down. Let's not talk about the Dallas Nalyssa Smith. She was so bad, she was nearly out of the league there. She was never even 1% as bad in Indiana as she was in Dallas. But the way she's playing in Vegas is, so you've got Angel, you've got obviously Chelsea, you've got Jackie Young running to one, you've got Kirsten Bell or Jewel Lloyd on either side. You've got on one side, you've got Chelsea Gray on the other side. Kind of a lot of the time they went from Jackie Young into a Chelsea Gray into Aja Wilson. But Aja Wilson, because of Aaliyah Boston kind of liked to, say if she was on one side, work in this area here. Because Aaliyah Boston worked in this area here, the help from Nalyssa Smith's player down was this area here, which meant that Nalyssa Smith being on this wing meant that the best thing she could kind of do if she cut, it was a tough one, because best case scenario, Nalyssa really needed that mid-range jumper and her release was too short. Her release was too slow and her jump shot was too slow. So because Nalyssa Smith wasn't effective in this area right here, Aaliyah Boston, who worked in this area, wasn't really able to work in the double big high-low. Which again, look, the double big in the year 2025, you need very specific types of bigs. So the way Nalyssa Smith played this year was so effective because Aja Wilson works in this area here. Regardless of where she gets the ball on the drive, she likes to work in this area here. If she gets in the post, sometimes she'll make a move, but a lot of times she gets on the perimeter, she gets it high. Even if she gets it there, she kind of walks into this area here and makes her move. So Nalyssa Smith began playing in this area here. She began playing short corner to short corner in the dunker spot. And what this allowed her to do was, Aja would make her read her moves up here. She was able to crash the offensive glass. If they double teamed Aja, or they were kind of, let's just say Aja is spotting up here, and Nelissa is in this position here, and let's just say it's Gray on the ball. They're kind of denying Aja and they're helping in a little bit. So they're 3/4 denying Aja, try to deny the ball. And because of that, they kind of help down a little bit. Nalyssa Smith takes a step in. Chelsea Gray is a good passer, is able to make some sort of move, and then suddenly Nalyssa Smith has the ball for a layup. They couldn't send doubles on Nalyssa Smith, who is an effective post scorer, because of Aja's threat. And also, late in the offense, especially if they're running an offense with JY, let's put Jewel is in the corner. Chelsea Gray is here. Chelsea Gray's here, and Aja is in this side here with Nalyssa Smith here. So Nalyssa Smith is playing on that back corner. Aja Wilson and Jackie Young are running some form of a two-man game. The ball's into Angel Wilson. There's 7 or 8 seconds to go on the shot clock. The ball goes into Chelsea Gray. Boom. A team's been working for 18 seconds of an offense. Nalyssa Smith comes in quickly. Chelsea Gray comes. Nalyssa Smith rolls to the basket. The ball's passed. The ball's passed into her. She was able to do little things that played to her strengths in Vegas. And it was a stylistic thing. Like, it's not like, oh, it's the Fever were a horrific place for Nalyssa Smith. It was never going to work out for Nalyssa. It was absolutely never going to work out for Nalyssa in Indiana. Because her and Aaliyah Boston's games didn't play off each other. She was not a good enough spacer. She wasn't a good enough spacer. She wasn't a good enough creator in the mid-range. She wasn't a good enough cutter to play off where Aaliyah Boston got her gravity. But what she does well is she's a really good finisher with her right hand. She's a really good offensive rebounder. She's athletic. And she's a good finisher. Like, she's able to run the P&R as a big. And that's one of the things that early in Caitlin's career when the team was playing slow, it was the Caitlin and Nalyssa Smith P&R that worked better because she rolls hard. The Fever did not play to her strengths. And it's right. Unpopular opinion, it was right to not play to her strengths. But her strengths actually worked well beside Angel Wilson because of where Angel Wilson operates on from the floor. Doesn't clash with where Nalyssa Smith likes to operate. Whereas where Nalyssa Smith and Aaliyah Boston like to operate are very similar positions. They were kind of getting in each other's way. And then obviously, look, there is clearly the improvement in the motor. That's one of those things that I think a lot of people are pointing. Like, her motor is 100 times better now than it was a year ago. And that's one of those things where is on her. Her effort, her discipline, her motor is on another level this year than last year. And that's the one thing I will say from Fever fans, like, you could be a little bit annoyed at, is I'm not saying she wasn't trying, but it's clear that she's hit another level in terms of motor. But this is I'm happy. I think 80-90% of Fever fans are happy for her. Because it was never, like, regardless of what people were saying online, like, I don't think she helped herself with some of the posts online. Like, out of nowhere, who's the best passer in the WNBA? I'm like, dude, you're on a team with Caitlin Clark. And by the way, she's currently a member of the Aces. If the Fever were in the playoffs and the Aces were out and Caitlin was playing and she tweets that same shit, and I was an Aces fan, I'd be pissed. When the Valkyries colors got announced as purple, and she comments on a Paige Bueckers post saying, we look good in purple, when the rumor was Paige, they were going to give the Valkyries number 1 pick. I'm like, you just don't do that. You don't do that. And I think there were a lot of times with Nalyssa Smith that she kind of got in her own way sometimes with the Twitter. That was it. Like, I think that's 80% of any Fever fan's problem with Nalyssa Smith came from Twitter or Dejanay. Like, Dejanay, it was like it is what it is. It is what it is. Like, I'm not, like, basketball wise, I would fucking love Dejanay on the Fever, basketball wise. But, like, every other reason, obviously not. Obviously not. But no, like, this version of Nalyssa doesn't. A version of Nalyssa that can be effective as a 5-point per game scorer is not something that I ever thought. I thought she was going to be a tank commander. I thought she was going to be one of those players that puts up mega stats on bad teams. And she's proven she could do that early on in her career. But she's also now proven she can put up mediocre stats on a good team and help them win. Which is, for me, more important. And a sign of an absolute sign of growth in Nalyssa Smith, not only in her actual ability on the court, but in her mentality towards the sport. And congrats. Like, genuinely congratulations. You don't want... It's good that she's found somewhere. Like, it is, for me, the whole Nalyssa Smith experience is probably the biggest example of a win-win-win everywhere. Like, Indiana got Sophie Cunningham. Sophie Cunningham is better for Indiana than Nalyssa Smith would have been for Indiana. The Dallas Wings got their 2027 first-round pick. Better than Nalyssa Smith was for the Wings. Nalyssa Smith went to the Aces, helped them win a championship. It is a win-win-win. Because again, who's better, Nalyssa Smith or Sophie Cunningham? If you ask me, I'm going to say Sophie. But Nelissa, again, is way younger, and the Fever need what Sophie does. Because again, the Fever is that spacer who can work, or Sophie is that spacer who can play off that weak side with Leah Boston, whereas Nalyssa's not. But I don't think Sophie would be as good in the Aces as Nalyssa. But either way, look, it's a win-win-win. Anyway, I'll see you guys.